my god, Diomedes. I wasn't even able to get live yet before you followed. Thank you. I'm just setting up Minecraft so you guys can have something visual. Let's see here. But it's being a little bit slow today. But yeah, I figured you guys can watch something nice in the meantime. What? What? Sorry, what? Why? What do you mean not found? What? Oh, my fluffy dad. What? What? Why is decided to being difficult today? Like, come on. I checked it earlier and it was just fine. But I guess the thing is like, no, you're gonna stream. No, we don't want you. Oh, come on, baby, I believe in you. Maybe it's just being cranky today. Or do I seriously need to like make a new world? Just like, that's gonna be like at least like 30 minutes delay on that. Like, oh damn, god damn. Please tell me it was just a temporary error. Because I'm pretty sure everything should be up to date. Yeah, don't worry about the black screen. I'm trying to fix it. With the okay, didn't say any error this time. Okay, good. Cats, what are you guys doing? No, babies are being weird. Oh, you're sitting on the shelf. Okay, let's see here. Where? Okay. Let me go. Oops. No. It's escorting. No. Nope, I am not. Yeah, it's gonna have to stay there. Okay, let's see. Hello, Diomedes. Okay, let's see. I'm just gonna head back home in Minecraft so you guys can have something to watch while I am reading. Let's see here. Could have just flew, but Okay, let's see here. Oh, perfect. It's getting dark too. Getting some mood lighting. But yeah, how you doing, Diomedes? You having a good day? Let's see. Bird shop, perfect. Let's see. And finally here. Okay, let's see here. Now I just need to, let's see, game capture. Let's see. That is. Oh, that's really sweet of you. Okay, so this is perfect because then you guys can see this, and I'm just gonna. Oh, flashbang! Ugh. I opened the one I'm gonna like. Can I get it in a tiny one? Thank you. Now I got like flashbang by the what do you call it? The website. Oh come on, let me drag you. There we go. So yeah, that should be good. Just got to title day. Perfect. There, I gotta mute myself so I don't hear myself right now. Okay. Well, it could be smarter than actually, you know. So I will be reading classic for probably most people that are actually, you know, reading literature. I'm gonna be reading Bram Stoker's 1897's Dracula. I've always wanted to read that one. And don't worry, I double checked and it's not copyrighted. If it's the 1897 version, which it says this one is, I cannot get copyrighted. So hell yeah. Don't worry, I'm not gonna read any Harry Potter ever. It sucks because it's a good one. So yeah. So I'm gonna start reading here, and I'm obviously gonna apologize if I, you know, pronounce something wrong, but I will do my best. I'm not normally don't read English like literature, so yeah, I will do my best here. Chapter 1. Jonathan Harker's Journal. 3rd of May, Bistris. Left Muniz at 8:35 p.m. On 1st of May, arrived at Vinea early next morning. Should have arrived at 6:46, but train was an hour late. Budapest seems a wonderful place, from the glimpses which I got off it from the train, and a little I could walk through the streets. I feared to go very far from the station, as we had arrived late and would start as near the correct time as possible. The imprecision I had was that we were leaving the west and entering the east, the most western of splendid bridges over the Danube, which is here of noble with the depths, took us among the traditions of Turkish rule. We left in pretty good time and came after nightfall to Klosterburg. Here I stopped for a night at the Hotel Royal. I had for dinner, or rather supper, a chicken done up some way with red pepper, which was very good but thirsty. Mem, get recipe for Mina. I asked the waitress, and he said it was called paprika hilt, and that as it was a national dish, I should be able to get it anywhere along the Carpathians. I found my smattering of German very useful here. Indeed, I don't know how I could be able to get on without it. Having had some time at my disposal, when in London I had visited the British Museum and made a search among the books and maps in the library regarding Transylvania, it had struck me that some foreknowledge of the country could hardly fail to have some importance in dealing with noblemen of the country. I find that the district he named is in the extreme east of the country, just on the border of 3 states, Transylvania, Moldavia, and Bukovina, in the midst of the Carpathian Mountains, one of the wildest and least known portions of Europe. I was not able to light on any map or work given the exact locality of the castle of Dracula, as there are no maps of this country as yet to compare with our own ordnance service maps. of reading tone. Good lord, I forget that this version have very old English, so I'm stumbling a lot. It's really hard keeping up my reading voice, but yay! But then again, I did warn you guys it's not going to be perfect, so let's continue. But I found that Bistris, the post town named by Count Dracula, is a fairly well-known place. I shall enter here some of my notes, as they may refresh my memory when I talk over my travels with Mina. In the population of Transylvania, there are 4 distinct nationalities: Saxons in the south, and mixed with them the Walash, who are the descendant of the Dracanes, Maguars in the west, and Sekiels in the east and the north. I am going among the latter, who claim to be descended from Attila and the Huns. This may be so, for when the Magyars conquered the country in the 11th century, they found the Huns settling it. Oh, thank you, Diomedes. Yeah, well, this will serve as a very good practice for me. It's a pity that I'm butchering heavily, but I shall prevail. I read the very known superstition in the world is carried into the horseshoe of the Carparians, as if there were the center of some sort of imaginative whirlpool. If so, my stay may be very interesting, then I must ask the Count all about them. I did not sleep well, although my bed was comfortable enough, for I had all sort of queer dreams. There was a dog howling all night under my window, which may have had something to do with it, or it may have been the paprika, for I had to drink up all the water in my carafe, and was still thirsty. Carafe? Towards morning I slept, and was awaked by the continuous knocking at my door, so I guessed I must have been sleeping soundly then. Pardon? I had for breakfast more paprika and a sort of porridge of maize flour, which they said was mamaliga, an eggplant stuffed with forcemeat. A very excellent dish which they called implalenta. Get recipe for this also. I had to hurry breakfast, for the train started a little bit before 8, or rather it out to have done so, for after rushing to the station at 7:30, I had to sit in the carriage for more than an hour before it began to move. It seems to me that the further east you go, the more unpunctual are the trains. What ought they to be in China? All day long we seemed to have dwelled through the country, which was full of beauty of every kind. Sometimes we saw little towns or castles on top of steep hills, such as we've seen in old missiles. Sometimes we ran by rivers and streams, which seemed from the wide stony margins on each side of them to be subject to great floods. It takes a lot of water and running strong to sweep the outside edge of a river clean. At every station there were groups of people, sometimes crowds, and in all sorts of attire. Some of them were just like the peasants at home, or those I saw coming through France and Germany, with short jackets and round hats, and homemade trousers, but others were picturesque. The women looked pretty, except when you got near them, but they were very clumsy about the waist. They had all full white of some kind of other sleeves of some kind or other, and most of them had big belts with a lot of strips of something fluttering from them like the dress in a ballet. But of course there were petticoats under them. The strangest figures we saw were the Slovaks, who were more barbaric than the rest, with their big cowboy hats, great baggy dirty white trousers, white linen shirts and enormous heavy leather belts, nearly a foot wide, all studded over with brass nails. They wore high boots with their trousers tucked into them, and they had long black hair and heavy black mustache. They were very picturesque, but do not look proportion, proportion. On the stage they would be set down at once as some old oriental band of bigots. They are, however, I am told, very harmless and rather wanting in natural self-assertion. Ah, goodness gracious. I forget how exhausting it is to read older. Look at the bright side, at least we are not reading the Odyssey or Odyssey or Iliaden. That's probably easier to pronounce. I'm pretty sure I would butcher every word in that poor book. It was on the dark side of twilight when we got to Bristles, which is a very interesting old place. Being practically on the frontier of the Borgo Pass leads up in the Burgonia. It had a very stormy existence, and it certainly showed marks of it. 50 years ago, a series of great fires took place, which have made terrible havoc on 5 separate occasions. At the very beginning of the 17th century, it underwent a siege of 3 weeks and lost 13,000 people, the casualty of war proper being assisted by famine and disease. Count Dracula had directed me to go to the Golden Crown Hotel, which I found, to my greatest delight. To be thoroughly old-fashioned, of course, I wanted to see all I could of the ways of the country. I was evidently expected, for when I got near the door, I faced a cheery-looking elder woman in the usual peasant dress, white undergarment, with a long double apron, front and back, of colored stuff fitting almost too tight for modesty. When I came close, she bowed and said, Herr, Herr Englishman. Yes, I said, Jonathan Hawker. She smiled and gave some message to an elderly man in white shirt sleeves, who had followed her to the door. He went, but immediately returned with a letter. My friend, welcome to Carpetania. I'm anxiously expecting you. Sleep well tonight. At 3 tomorrow, the diligence will start for Buconia, a place on it is kept for you. At the Borgon Pass, my carriage will await you, and will bring you to me. I trust that your journey from London has been a happy one, and that you will enjoy your stay in my beautiful land. Your friend Dracula. May 4th. I found that my landlord had got a letter from the Count, directing him to secure the best place on the couch for me, but on making inquiry as to details he seemed somewhat reticent and pretended that he could not understand my German. Well, isn't that a convenience? This could not be true because up, on, up to then he had understood it perfectly. At least he answered my question exactly as if he did. He and his wife, the old lady who had received me, looked at each other in a frightened sort of way. He mumbled out that the money had been sent in a letter, and that's all he knew. Even if I asked him if he knew Count Dracula and could tell me anything of his castle, both he and his wife crossed themselves, and saying that they knew nothing at all, simply refusing to speak further. It was so near the time of starting that I had no time to ask anyone else, for it was all very mysterious and not by any means comforting. Just before I was leaving, the old lady came up to my room and said, in a hysterical way, "Must you go? Oh, young her, must you go?" She was in such an excited state that she seemed to have lost her grip on whatever German she knew, and mixed it all up with some other language which I did not know at all. I was just able to follow her by asking many questions. When I told her that I must go at once, and that I was engaged on important business, she asked again, "Do you know what day it is?" I answered that it was the 4th of May. She shook her head and said again, "Oh yes, I know that. But do you know what day it is?" On my saying that I didn't understand, she went on, "It's the eve of the St. George Day. Do you not know that tonight, when the clock strikes midnight, all evil things in the world will have full sway? Do you know where you're going and what you're going to?" She was in such evident distress that I tried to comfort her, but without effect. Finally, she went down on her knees and implored me not to go, at least to wait a day or two before starting. I need to look into that later. It was all ridiculous, but I did not feel comfortable. However, there was business to be done, and I could allow nothing to interfere with it. I tried to raise her up and said, as gravely as I could, that I thanked her, but my duties was imperative, and that I must go. She then rose and dried her eyes, taking a crucifix from her neck, and offered it to me. I did not know what to do, for as an English churchman, I had been taught to regard such thing as in some measure idolatrous, I guess idolization, and yet it seemed so ungracious to refuse an old lady meaning so well in such a state of mind. She saw, I suppose, the doubt in my face, for she put the rosary around my neck and said, "For your mother's sake," and went out the room. I'm writing up this part of the diary while I'm waiting for the coach, which is, of course, late. The crucifix is still around my neck. Whether it's the old lady's fear, or the many ghostly traditions of this place, or the crucifix itself, I don't know, but I am not feeling nearly as easy in my mind as usual. If this book should ever reach me before I do, let it bring my goodbye. Here comes the coach. May 5th. The castle. The grey of the morning has passed, and the sun is high over the distant horizon, which seems jagged. Wherever with trees or hills, I know not, for it is so far off that big things and little are mixed. I am not sleepy, and as I am not to be called till I wake, naturally I'll write till sleep comes. There are many odd things to put down, and least who reads them may fancy that I didn't too well before I left Britz's. Let me put down my dinner exactly. I dined on whatever they called robber steak. Bits of bacon, onion and beef, seasoned with red pepper and strong on sticks, roasted over fire in a simple style of London cat's meat. Out of reading voice? I'm sorry, what? Cat's meat? I hope they don't actually mean cat's meat. I hope not. The wine was golden mendash, which produced a queer sting on the tongue, which is, however, not disagreeable. I had only a couple of glasses of this, and nothing else. When I got on the couch, the driver had not taken his seat, and I saw him talking to the landlady. They were evidently talking of me, for every now and then they looked at me, and some of the people who were sitting on the bench outside of the door came and listened, and then looked at me. Most of them pityingly. I could hear a lot of words, often repeated queer words, for there were many nationalities in the crowd, so I quietly got my polyglot dictionary from my bag and looked them out. I must say they were not cheering for me, for among them were Ordog, Satan, Pokol, Hell, Streshkonka, Witch, Vorklok, and Vorloslak both mean the same thing, one being Slovak and the other Serbian, for something that is either werewolf or vampire man. I must ask the Count about these superstitions. When we started, the crowd rounded the inn door, which had by this time swelled to a considerable size. Old made the sign of the cross and pointed two fingers toward me. With some difficulty, I got a fellow passenger to tell me what they meant. He would not answer at first, but on learning that I was English, he explained that it was a charm or guard against evil eye. This was not very pleasant for me, just starting for an unknown place to meeting an unknown man, but everyone seemed so kind-hearted and so sorrowful and so sympathetic that I could not but be touched. Goodness gracious. I shall never forget the last glimpses which I had. Sorry. Goodness gracious, do I have a crow in my throat or something? Goodness gracious. Okay, this crow's being stubborn. Okay. Let's see. The last glimpses which I had of the inn yard isn't a crowd of picturesque figures, all crossing themselves, as they stood around the wide archway, with its background of rich foliage of oleander and orange trees, in green towns clustered in the center of the yard. Then our driver, whose wide linen drawers covered the whole front of the box set, Gotza. They called them cracked. They called them cracked his big whip over his four small horses, which ran abreast, and we set off on our journey. Goodness, the English is so old. I can practically feel it. I kind of feel like the dog's also listening to the story, being like, oh, go on, go on. I soon lost sight and recollection of ghostly fear in the beautiful of the scene as we drove along. Although, had I known the language or rather languages which my fellow passengers were speaking, I might not have been able to throw them off so easily. Before we lay a green sloped land full of forest and wood, with here and there steep hills, crowned with clumps of trees or with farmhouses, the blank gable end to the road. There was everywhere a bewildered mass of fruit blossom, apples, plums, pears, and cherries. And as we drove by, I could see a green grass under the trees, spangled with the fallen petals. And among these green hills of what they called the Mythland's Rand Road, losing itself as it swept around the grassy curves, or was shut out by the strangling ends of the pine woods, which here and there ran down the hillside like a tongue of flame. The road was rugged, but still we seemed to fly over it with a feverish haste. I could not understand then what the haste meant, but the driver was evidently bent on losing no time in reaching Burgon Brood. I was told that this road is in summertime excellent, but that it had not yet been put in order after the winter snows. In this respect, it is different from the general run of roads in Cafaria, for it is an old tradition that they are not to be kept in too good order. Of old, the Hospards would not repair them, lest the Turks should think that they were preparing to bring in foreign troops. And so the hasten the war which was always really at loading point. Beyond the green welling hills of the Mythal lands rose mighty slopes of forest. Up to the lofty steps of the Caffarians themselves, right and left of us, they towered, with the afternoon sun falling upon them, and bringing out all the glorious colors of this beautiful range, deep blue and purple in the shadows of the peaks, green and brown where the grass and rocks mingled, and the endless perspective of jagged rocks and pointed crags, till these were themselves lost in the distance. where the snowy peaks rose grandly, here and there seeming mightily shift in the mountains, though which as the sun began to sink, we saw now and again the white gleam of falling water. One of my companions touched my arm as we swept around the base of a hill and opened up the lofty snow-covered peaks of the mountain, which seemed as we are wound on our serpentine way to be right before us. Look, his stench deck, God's seat, and he crossed himself reversely. Wait. Reverently? My bad. As we wandered on the endless way, the sun sank lower and lower behind us. The shadows of the evening began to creep around us. It was emphasized by the fact that the snow mountain top still held the sunset and seemed to glow out with a delicate, cool pink. Here and there we passed Kazakhs and Slovaks, all in picturesque attire, but I noticed that the Gorhit was painfully prevalent. By the roadside were many crosses, and as we swept by, my companions all crossed themselves. Here and there was a peasant man or a woman kneeling before a shrine, who did not even turn around as we approached, but seemed in self-surrender of devotion to have neither eyes nor ears of the outer world. There were many things new to me. For instance, hay ricks in the trees, and here and there were beautiful masses of weeping birch, their white stems shining like silver through the delicate green of the leaves. Makes me wonder who those people were that on the side road praying. Fascinating. Now and again we passed a leathered wagon, the ordinary peasant cart with its long snake-like vertebra, calculated to suit the inequality of the road. Inequalities of the road. On this were sure to be seated quite a group of homecoming peasants, the Shreks or Czechs with their white, and the Slovaks with their colorful sheepskin, and the latter carrying lance fashion, their long staffs with axes at the end. As the evening fell, it begins to get very cold, and the growing twilight seemed to merge into one dark mistiness of gloom of the trees, oak, birch, and pine. Though in the valley which ran deep between the spurs of the hills, as we ascended through the pass, the dark fears stood out here and there against the background of the late-lying snow. Sometimes, as the road was cut through the pine woods that seemed in the dark to be closing down upon us, great masses of greyness which here and there bestowed the trees produced a peculiar, weird, and solemn effect, which carried on the thought and grim fanciest engage oh my god, and oh my god, this part. Engendered earlier in the evening, when the falling sunset threw into strange relief the ghost-like cloud which amongst the Caparians seemed to wind precariously through the valley. Sometimes the hills were too steep that despite our driver's haste, the horses could only go slowly. In wish to I wished to get down and walk up them, as we do at home, but the driver could not hear of it. No, no, he said, you must not walk here. The dogs are too fierce. And then he added, with, with what he evidently meant of grim pleasantry, for he looked round to catch the approaching smile of the rest. And you may have enough of such matters before you go to sleep. The only stop he would make was a moment's pause to light his lamp. Goodness. When it grew dark, and there seems to be some existment among the passengers, and they kept speaking to him, one after the other, as though urging him to go further speed. He lashed the horses unmercifully with his long whip, and with wild cries of encouragement urged them to go further, urged them on to further excursions. Then through the darkness I could see a sort of patch of grey light ahead of us, as though there were a cleft in the hills. The excitement of the passengers grew greater. The crazy coach rocked on its great leather springs and swayed like a boat tossed on a stormy sea. I had to hold on. The road grew more level, and we appeared to be flying along. Then the mountains seemed to come near to us on each side and to frown upon us, down upon us. We were entering on the Borgo Pass. One by one, several of the passengers offered me gifts, which they passed upon me with a earnestly which would have taken no denial. There were certainly of an odd and variant kind, but each was given in simple good faith, with a kindly word and a blessing. And that same strange mixture of fear-meaning moments which I had seen outside of the hotel at Bridgeris, a sign of the cross and the guards against the evil eye. Then, as we flew along, the driver leaned forward, and on each side the passenger craned over the edge of the coach. Peering eagerly into the darkness, it was evident that something very exciting was either happening or expected, but though I asked the passengers, no one would give me a slight explanation. Give me the slightest explanation. This state of excitement kept on for some little time, and at last we saw before us the pass opening out on the eastern side. There were dark rolling clouds overhead, and in the air the heavy, oppressing scenes of thunder. It seems as though the mountain range had separated two atmospheres, and that now that we had gotten into a thunderous one, I was now myself looking out of the caverns which was to take me to the Count. Each moment I expected to see the glare of lamps through the dark blackness, but all was dark. The only light was flickering rays of our own lamps, in which the stem from our hard-driven horses rose in white clouds. We could see now the sandy road lying white before us, but there was on it no sign of a vehicle. The passengers drew back with a sigh of gladness, which seemed to be. Oh, hello, Just. How you doing? Was just drinking a bit. That's the only downside when you read. Your mouth gets really dry because you pronounce words that you normally don't do, especially not in this sort of old book. But it's quite enjoyable. Okay, let's see where was I? Hmm. The passionist drew back in with a sigh of gladness, which seemed to mock my own disappointment. I was already thinking that I was already thinking what I had best do, when the driver, looking at his watch, said to the otter something which I could hardly hear. It was spoken so quietly and in a low tone, I thought it was an hour less than the time. Then turning to me and spoke German worse than my own. There is no carriage here. The Herr is not expected after all. He will now come on to Burgonia and return tomorrow or the next day. Better the next day. While he was speaking, the horses began to neigh and snort and plunge wildly, so the driver had to hold them up. Then, amongst the shores of screams from the peasants and a universal crossing of themselves, a coche with 4 horses drove up behind us, overtook us, and drew up beside the couch. I could see from the flash of our lamps as the ray fell on them, and the horses were coal black, splendid animals. They were driven by a tall man with long brown beard and black furry hat, which seemed to hide his face from us. I could only see the gleam of a pair of very bright eyes, which seemed to be red in the lamplight as he turned to us. He said to the driver, "You were early tonight, my friend." The man stammered and replied, "The English Herr was in a hurry." To which the stranger replied, "That is why I suppose you wished him to go to Burgonia. You cannot deceive me, my friend. I know too much, and my horses are swift." As he spoke, he smiled, and the lamplight fell on a hard-looking mouth, with very red lips and sharp-looking teeth, as white as ivory. One of my companions whispered to another the line from Burger's Lerner, "Dein die thuttert reinten Schnau." They want me to. They wanted me to. Sorry, I'm so sorry I butchered the German. I'm no German. Uh, for the dead travels fast. Ooh, spooky. But technically, I do think that Dracula counts as a gothic horror. The strange driver evidently heard the words, for he looked up with a gleaming smile. The passengers turned his face away, at the same time putting out his 2 fingers and crossing himself. "Give me the Herr's luggage," said the driver, and with exceeding alacrity my bags were handed out and put in the couch. Then I descended from the side of the couch. As the couch was close alongside, driver helped me with a hand which caught my arm in a grip of steel. His strength must have been prodig... Pro, oh eh, my god, prodigious. Without a word, he took his reins. The horses turned, and we swept into the darkness of the pass. As I looked back, I saw the steam of the horses and the couch by the light of the lamps, and projected against it the figures of my late companions crossing themselves. Then the driver cracked his whip and called to his horses, and off they swept on their way to Bukovia. As they sank into the darkness, I felt a strange chill and a lonely feeling come over me. But a cloak was thrown over my shoulders and a rug across my knee. And the driver said in an excellent German, "The night is chill, mein Herr." And my master, the Count, bade me to take all care of you. There is a flask of Schwilschnitt, the plum brandy of the country, underneath the seat, if you should require it. I did not take any, but it was comfort to know it was there all the same. I felt a little strange, and not a little frightened. I think, had there been any alternative, I should have taken it, instead of pursuing the unknown night journey. The carriage went at a hard pace straight along. Then we made a couple turns and went along another straight road. It seems to me that we were simply going over and over the same ground again, and so I took note of some salient points and found that this was so. I would have liked to have asked the driver that this all meant, but I really feared to do so, for I thought that, placed as I was, any protest would have had no effect, in case there had been an intention to delay. By and by, however, as I was curious to know how time was passing, I struck a match and by its flame looked at my watch. It was within a few minutes of midnight. It gave me a sort of shock, for I suppose the general superstition about midnight was increased by my recent experience. I waited with a sick feeling of suspense. Then a dog began to howl somewhere in a farmhouse far down the road, a long, agonizing wailing, as if from fear the sound was taken up by another dog, and then another and another, till born. A what? I'm sorry, doggo. Okay, okay. Oh, cute. We had a random dog appear. Okay, that's it. That's random. What? Can you not push your brethren? One second, I need to make sure that it doesn't push any of my dogs. Okay, you can see too. I'm not sure where you came from then, but okay, scooching, scooching. Seriously, where did you come from? You should be all the way over there. Oh well. Oh, we're talking about dogs, so. Okay. Very weird. Okay, let's see here. Another and another, till born on the wind which now sighed softly through the pass, a wild howling began. It seemed to come from all over the country, as far as the imagination could grasp. It thought the gloom of the night. At the first howl, the horses began to strain and rear, but the driver spoke to them soothingly, and they quiet down, but shivered and sweated as though after a runaway from sudden fright. Then, far off in the distance, from the mountains, on each side of us began a louder and a sharper howling, that of wolves, which affected both the horses and myself in the same way, for I was minded to jump from the calash and run, whilst they reared again and plunged madly. So the driver had to use all his great strength to keep them from bolting. In a few minutes, however, my own ears got accustomed to the sound, and the horses so far became quiet that the driver was able to descend and to stand before them. He petted and soothed them and whispered something in their ear, as I have heard of horse tamers doing, and with extraordinary effect, for under his cares they become quite manageable again, though they still trembled. The driver again took his seat and shaked his rear rein. Started off at a great pace. This time, after going to the far side of the pass, he suddenly turned down a narrow roadway which ran sharply to the right. Soon we were hemmed in with trees, which in places arched right over the roadway, till we passed as though a tunnel, and again great foaming rocks guarded us boldly on each side. Although we were in shelter, we could hear the rising wind, for it moaned and whistled through the rocks, and the branches of the trees crashed together as we swept along. It grew colder and colder still, and fine powdery snow began to fall, so that soon we and all around us were covered with a white blanket. The keen wind still carried the howl of the dogs, though this grew fainter as we went on our way. The baying of the wolves sounded nearer, as though they were closing around on us from each side. I grew dreadfully afraid, and the horses shared my fear. Oh my god, thank you so much, Borden, for following. Hi. How you doing? Okay, let's see here. Also scared the fluff out of me. Okay, let's see. Okay. Yeah, I'm reading Dracula. You can go back later and listen. You have missed literally an hour of it, but I'm still on chapter 1, and I have butchered a lot of words. Okay, let's see here. The driver, however, was not in the least disturbed. He kept turning his head and left and right, but I could not see anything through the darkness. Suddenly, away on our left I saw a faint flickering blue flame. The driver saw it in the same moment. He at once checked the horses and jumping to the ground, disappearing into the darkness. I did not know what to do, the least as the howl of the wolves grew closer. But while I wondered, the driver suddenly appeared again, and without a word took his seat, and we resumed our journey. I think I must have fallen asleep and kept dreaming of the incident, for it seemed to be repeated endlessly, and now looking back, it is like a sort of awful nightmare. Once the flame appeared so near the road, and even in the darkest darkness around us, I could watch I could watch the driver's motion. He went rapidly to where the blue flame arose. It must have been very faint, for it did not seem to illuminate the place around it at all, and gathered a few stones, formed them into some sort of device. Once their appearance a strange optical effect. When he stood between me and the flame, he did not obstruct it, for it could before I could see its ghostly flicker all the same. It startled me, but as the effect was only momentarily, I took it that my eyes deceived me, straying through the darkness. Then for a time there were no blue flames, and we sped onwards throughout the gloom, with the hover of the wolves around us, as though they were following in a moving circle. At least there came a time where the driver went further afield than he had yet gone, and during his absence the horses began to tremble worse than ever, and to snort and scream with fright. I could not see any cause of it, for the howling of the wolf had ceased altogether, but just then the moon, sailing through the black clouds, appeared behind a jagged crest of the beetling, pine-clad rocks, and by its light I saw around us a circle of wolves with white teeth of looming red tongues. Let's see. With long, sinewy limbs and shaggy hair, they were 100 times more terrifying in their grim silence which held them than even when they were howling. For myself, I felt sort of paralyzed of fear. It is only when a man feels himself face to face with such horrors that they understand their true importance. I read that wrong. Import. All at once the wolves began to howl as though the moonlight had some peculiar effect on them. The horses jumped about to rear and looked helplessly round with eyes that rolled in a way painful to see, but the living ring of terror encompassed them on every side, and they had perforce to remain within it. I called to the coachman to come, for it seemed to me that our only chance was to try to break out through the ring, and to aid his approach, I shouted and beat the side of the calcia, hoping by the noise to scare the wolves from the side, so to give him a chance to react, uh, reaching the trap. How he came there, I know not, but I heard his voice raised in a tone of imperious command, and looked towards the sound, saw him stand in the roadway as he swept his long arms, as though brushing aside some impellent obstacle. The wolves fell back and backed further still. Just then a heavy cloud passed around the face of the moon, so that we were again in darkness. Oh, it's raining. When I could see again, the driver was climbing into the coach, and the wolves disappeared. This was all so strange and uncanny that a dreadful fear came upon me. and I was afraid to speak or move. The time seemed interminable as we swept on our way, now in almost complete darkness, for the rolling cloud obscured the moon. We kept on ascending with occasionally period of quick descent, but in the main always ascending. Suddenly I became conscious of the fact that the driver was in the act of pulling up the horses in a courtyard of a vast ruined castle, from whose tall black windows came no ray of light, and whose broken battlements showed a jagged line against the sky. Ooh, end of chapter 1, you guys. Seriously, it's been an hour and I only managed to read one chapter? Damn. Wait, how many chapters are there? One sec. Okay, let's see. I'm just curious. How many chapters are there in August? 27! God damn, that's gonna be a lot. Let's say on each Friday. Let's say I read like 4 chapters each Friday. That would be like 2. That would be many Fridays. Okay. Wait, why could I not see your comment? I saw in my Twitch now that you had comment how many pages there in a chapter. I honestly don't know, but I am on chapter 4 now and we're on page 14. So it might be 13 like pages in one chapter. Is my guess. Damn, I'm rusty. I normally read way faster than this, but okay, let's see here. There we go. Chapter 2. Jonathan Harker's journal continues. 5th of May. I must have been asleep, for certainly if I had been fully awake, I must have noticed the approach of a sudden but remarkable place. In the gloom of the courtyard, looked of the considerable size, as several dark ways led from it under great round arches. It perhaps seemed bigger than it really is. I have not yet been able to see it by daylight. When the coach stopped, the driver jumped down and held out his hand to assist me to alight. Again, I could not but notice his protruding strength. His hand actually seemed like a steel vise that could have crushed mine if he had chosen. Then he took my traps and placed them on the ground beside me. As I stood close to the great door, old and sturdy, studded with large iron nails, and set in a projecting doorway of massive stone, I could see even in the dim light that the stone was massively carved, but that the carving had been much worn by time and weather. As I stood, the driver jumped again in his seat and shook the reins. The horse started forward, and trapped all disappeared down one of the dark openings. I stood in silence where I was, for I did not know what to do. Of bell or knocker there were no sign. Though these frowning walls and dark window openings, it was not likely that my voice could penetrate. The time I waited seemed endless, and I felt doubts and fears crowding upon me. What sort of place had I come to, and among what kind of people? What sort of grim adventure was it on which I had embarked? Was it a customary incident in the life of a solicitor's clerk sent out to explain the purchase of a London estate to a foreigner? A, a solicitor clerk? Mina would not like that. Solicitor. For just before leaving London, I got word that my examination was successful. And I am just, and I'm now a fully blown solicitor. I began to rub my eyes and pinch myself to see if I were awake. It all seemed like a horrible nightmare to me, and I expected that I should suddenly awake and find myself at home, with a dawn struggling in thought the window, as I had now and again felt in the morning after a day of overwork. But my flesh awakened, answered the pinch test, my eyes were not to be deceived. I was indeed awake and among the Carpathania. All I could do now was to be patient and wait the coming morning. Just as I had come to this conclusion, I heard a heavy step approaching behind the great door, and saw through the chinks and gleams of a coming light. Then there was a sound of rattling chains and the clanking of a massive bolt drawn back. A key was turned with a loud, gritting noise of long disuse, and the great door swung back. Within stood a tall man, clean shaven, save from a long white moustache, and clad in black from head to toe, without a single speck of color about him anywhere. He held his hand at a cheap silver lamp, in which the flame burned without a shine or globe of any kind, throwing long shivering shadows at its flickers in the draught of the open door. The old man motioned me in with his right hand, with a courtly gesture, saying excellent English, but with a strange intonation. "Welcome to my house. Enter freely, and of your own free will." He made no motion of stepping to meet me, but stood like a statue, as though his gesture of welcoming had fixed him into stone. The instant, however, that I had stepped over the threshold, he moved impulsively forward, and holding out his hand and grasped mine with a strength which made my wince, an effect which was not lessened by the fact that it had seemed cold as ice, more like a hand of the dead than the living. Again he said, "Welcome to my house. Enter freely, go safely, and leave something of the happiness you bring." What the hell is that sound? Oh, it was my birthday. The strength of the handshake was so much akin to that which I had noticed in the driver, whose face I had not seen, that of a moment I doubt if it were not the same person of whom I was speaking to. So to make sure, I said interrogatively, "Count Dracula?" He bowed in courteously, way as he replied, "I am Dracula, and I bid you welcome, Miss Hawker, to my house. Come in. The night air is chill, and you must need to eat and rest." As he was speaking, put the lamp on a bracket on the wall and stepped out, took my luggage. He had carried it in before I could forestall him. I protested, but he insisted. Nay, sir, you are my guest. It is late, and my people are not available. Pardon, gotta take a drink. Maybe I should have a more creepy voice to him, like, no. I don't think I can. If I could change the man voice, I wish I could. Let me know if the Minecraft music is too loud. Let me see to make you comfortable myself. I insist. He insisted on carrying my traps along the passage, and then up. Thanks. And then up a great winding stair, and along another great pass. On those stone floors our steps rang heavily. And at the end of this he threw open a heavy door, and I rejoiced to see within a well-lit room in which a table was spread for supper, and whose mighty heat a great fire of logs, freshly replenished, flamed and flared. The Count halted, putting down my bags, closed the door, and crossing the room, opening another door, which led into a small octagonal room lit by a single lamp, and seemingly without a window of any sort. Passing through it, he opened another door, motioning me to enter. It was a welcome sight, for here was a great bedroom, well lit and warmed with another log fire, also added to but lately, for the top logs were fresh, which sent a hollow roar up the wide chimney. The Count himself left my luggage inside and withdrew, saying, before I closed the door, "You will need, after your journey, to refresh yourself by making your toilet." I'm sorry, out of reading voice? By making your toilet. I'm sorry, is Count Dracula gonna make him a toilet? I'm sorry, that kinda cracked me up. The old English is just amazing. Okay, let's see. I trust that you will find all you wish. When you are ready, come into the other room, where you will find your supper prepared. The light and the warmth and the Count's courtesy welcomed seemed to have dispatched all my doubts and fears. Having then reached my normal state, I discovered that I was half famished with hunger. So, making a hasty toilet, I went into the other room. I found supper already laid out. A host who stood on the other side of the great fireplace, leaning against the stonework, made a graceful wave of his hand to the table and said, "I pray you, be seated and sup, how you please. You will, I trust, excuse me that I do not join you, but I had dined already, and I do not sup." Sheila, hello. How you doing, girl? Hope you slept well. For next stream, I'm definitely gonna need at least like more. Yeah, Sheila, I'm gonna tell you this. The old English in this book so far have made me stumble so much. I'm like, like so much. Oh no! Wait, what? Did you oversleep to work? Well, hopefully you didn't oversleep to work. That was bad. Oh no, you did. Oh, fluff. Oh no, they're not. Oh, damn, they're not bad. They're bad. Okay, let's see. I'm just gonna scroll down. Well, you can always listen to me reading this, and if you wanna, listen backwards, you can always, Okay, that's not that bad. It's worse if it would be like 2 hours. That would be bad, you know. But if you guys, whoever is listening right now, other than Sheila and possibly Warden, one sec. I really hope that wasn't in the stream. Hopefully nobody heard it. Um, Pardon if that's the case. But if you guys want to listen to the first chapter here, you can just listen to it afterwards. But let's just say that. Thank you, Sheila. It's gonna be a lot of like jumbles of words and stuff like that. Oh, I actually took some mod packs together, like with the mod packs I liked. Pardon. So I think one of these is similar to Optify. My God, I forgot what it's called. Eh, I can send you that mod pack later, but I just wanted Minecraft to look a little bit more cozy because I figured like if I read my story, it's like really nice and stuff like that. Also, yeah, that's my house, my flowery house. So yeah. Also, that dog, I don't know. I'm actually gonna call him Dracula because he just sneaked in here, and I'm like, where did you come from? So anyhow, I'm gonna continue because this is a reading story, not playing Minecraft. So yeah, but I really do like how the light is affecting. So yeah, but poke me later, Warden, and I can give you the information. Hmm. Ah, yeah. Just gonna drink some more. Yeah. Did I scroll too much? Okay, no. I handed to him the sealed letter which Mr. Hawkins had entrusted to me. He opened it and read it gravely. Then, with a charming smile, he handed it to me to read. One passage of it, one pass of it, at least he gave me a thrill of pleasure. I must regret that an attack of God, from which my lady, I am a constant sufferer, forbids absolute any travelling on my part for some time to come. But I'm happy to say I can send a sufficient substitute, one in whom I have ever possible confidence. He's a young man full of energy and talent in his own way, and a very faithful disposition. He is discreet and silent and has grown into manhood in my service. I'm sorry, I was not expecting that. I sent I know in this language it means like manhood, like is an adult, but in modern language it means something else that I would not discuss. But I was just like, oh, how language have evolved. How lovely. He shall be ready to attend on you when you will during his day, and shall take your instructions in all matters. The Count himself came forward and took off the cover of a dish, and I fell to at once on an excellent roasted chicken, this with some cheese and a salad and a bottle of old Tokay, of which I had 2 glasses, was my supper. During the time I was eating in the Count asked me many questions as to my journey, and I told him my degrees, all I had experienced. By this time I had finished my supper, and by my host's desire had drawn up a chair by the fire and began to smoke a cigar which he offered me, at the same time excusing himself that he did not smoke. I had now an opportunity of observing him, and found him of a very marked physiognomy. Goodness. His face was strong, a very strong aquiline, with high bridge of a thin nose and peculiar arched nostrils, with lofty and domed forehead, and hair growing chunky around the temple but profusely elsewhere. His eyebrows were very massive, almost meeting over the nose, and with bushy hair that seemed to curl in its own profusion. The mouth, as far as I could see, is under the heavy moustache, was fixed rather cruel looking. It peculiar sharp white teeth. I'm sorry, babies. I'm in a stream live reading. I can't have some weird like tunnel thingies here. For you guys that don't know, my baby's got a new cat toy not long ago. A cat tunnel. And they just yeet into it and sliding the tunnel all across the fluffing floor. Oj, jamma liten. I'm recording here. What the hell are you playing with? Okay, he's playing with an unknown object. Anyhow, let's continue. Hopefully it's not audible on stream. Okay, let's see here. These protrude, oh my god, I'm butchering the English language today. Hell yeah. These protruding over the lips, whose remarkably ruddiness showed astonishing vitality in a man of his years. For the rest, his ears were pale, and at the tops extremely pointed. The chin was broad and strong, and the cheeks firm though thin. The general effect was one of an extraordinary pallor. Hitherto I had noticed the back of his hands as they lay on his knees in the firelight. They had seemed rather white and fine, but seems them now close to me, I could not but notice that they had rather coarse broad with squat fingers. Strange to say, there were hairs in the centre of the palm. The nails were long and fine, and cut to a sharp point, as the Count leaned over me, and his hand touched me. I could not repress a shudder. It may have been that his breath was shank, but a horrible feeling of nausea came over me, which to what I could not conceal. Okay, that's good. Good to know, my little babies. You guys can go mayhem and they will not hear. That's great. The Count evidently noticed it, drew back, and with a grim sort of a smile, which showed more than he had yet done, his protrudent teeth, sat himself down again on his own side of the fireplace. We were both silent for a while, and as I looked towards the window, I saw the first dim streak of the coming dawn. It seemed a strange stillness over everything, but as I listened, I heard as if from down below in the alley, the house of many wolves, the Count's eyes gleamed, and he said, "Listen to them, the children of the night. What music they make. Seeing, I suppose, some expression in my face strange to him," he added. "Ah, sir, you dwellers in the city cannot enter into the feeling of the hunter." Then he rose and said, "But you must be tired. Your bedroom is all ready, and tomorrow you shall sleep as late as you will. I have to be away till the afternoon, so sleep well and dream well." With a curtsy bow, he opened for me himself a door to the octagonal room, and I entered my bedroom. I am all in a sea of wonder. I doubt, I fear, I think strange things, which I dare not to confess to my own soul. God keep me, if only for the sake of those dear to me. 7th of May. It is again early morning, but I have rested and enjoyed the last 24 hours. I slept till late in the day, and awoke of my own accord. When I had dreamt myself, I went into the room where we had supper, and found a cold breakfast laid out, with coffee kept hot by a pot being placed on the heather. Not sure if I said it right, but oh well. There was a card by the table, on which was written, I have been I have to be absent for a while. Do not wait for me, indeed. I set to enjoy a hearty meal. When I was done, I looked for a bell, so that I might let the servant know I had finished, but I could not find one. There were certainly odd definitions, deficits in the house, considering the extraordinary evidence of wealth which are round me. The table service is of gold, and so beautifully woven that it must have been of immense value. The curtain and upholstery of the chairs and sofa, and the hanging of my beds are of the costliest of the most beautiful fabric, and must have been of fabulous value when they were made, for they are centuries old, though in excellent order. I saw something in them in Hampton Court, but they were worn and frayed and moth-eaten, not mouth-eaten. But still, in none of the rooms is there a mirror, is not even a toilet glass on my table, and I had to get the little shaving glass from my bag before I could either shave or brush my hair. I have not yet seen a servant anywhere, nor heard a sound near the castle except the howling of wolves. Sometime after I had finished my meal, I had I do not know where to call it breakfast or dinner, for it was between 5 and 6 when I had it. I looked about for something to read, for I did not like to go without the castle until I had asked the Count's permission. There was absolutely nothing in the room, books, newspaper, or even written materials, so I opened another door in the room and found a sort of library. The door opposite mine I tried but found locked. In the library I found, to my greatest delight, a vast number of English books, whole shelves full of them, and bound volumes of magazines and newspapers. A table in the center was littered with English magazines and newspapers, though none of them were of very recent date. The books were from most various kinds: history, geography, politics, political economy, botany, geology, law, all relating to English and English life, and customs and manners. These were even such books of reference as the London Directory, the Red and the Blue Books, Whitestake's Almanacs, the Army and Navy List, and it somehow gladdened my heart to see it, the Law List. While I was looking at the books, the door opened and Count entered. He saluted me in a hearty way and hoped that I had a good night rest. Then he went on. Oh my god, the dogs, it looks like they are really enjoying this story. They're like, go on. Oh my goodness. Excuse me. I'm glad you have found your way in here, for I'm sure there is much that will interest you. These companions that and he laid his hand on some of the books, have been good friends to me, and for some years past, ever since I had a good idea of going to London, have given me many hours of pleasure. Though them I have come to know your great England, and to know her is to love her. I long to go through the crowded street of your mighty London, to be in the midst of the whirls and rush of humanity, to share its life, its change, its death, and all that makes it what it is, but at last. As yet I only know your tongue, though, through books. To you, my friend, I look that I know it to speak. But Count, I said, you know and speak English thoroughly. He bowed gravely. I thank you, my friend, for your all too flattering esteem. But yet I fear that I am but a little way on the roads I would travel. True, true. I know the grammar and the words, but yet I know not how to speak them. Indeed, I say, you speak excellently. Not so, he answered. Well, I know that. Did I move and speak in your London? None here are who would not know me for a stranger. That is not enough for me. Here I am noble. I am a Bodjar. The common people know me. And I am a master, but a stranger in a strange land. He is no one. Man knows him not. And to know not is to care not for. I am content if I am like the rest, so that no man stops if he sees me, or pauses in his speaking if he hears my word. Ha ha. A stranger, I have been so long master that I would be master still, or at least that none other should be master of me. You come to me not alone as agent of my friend Peter Hawkins of Exeter to tell me all about my new estate in London. You shall, I trust, rest here with me a while, so that by our talking I may learn the English intonation, and I would that you tell me when I make errors, even of the smallest in my speaking. I am sorry that I had to be away so long today, but you will, I know, forgiven one who has many important affairs in hand. Of course, let's see here. Of course, I shall. I said all I could about being willing and asked if I might come into the room when I choose, he answered. Yes, certainly, and added, you may go wherever you wish in the castle, except where the door are locked. There, of course, you will not wish to go. There is reasons all the things are as they are. And did you see with my eyes, and now with my knowledge, you would perhaps better understand. I said I was sure of this, and then he went on. We are in Transylvania, and Transylvania is not England. Our way are not your way, and there shall be to you many strange things, nay, from what you have told me of your experience already. You know something of what strange things there may be. Ah, goodness gracious, feels like I'm talking in riddles here. This leads to much conversation, and as it was evident that he wanted to talk, if only for talking's sake, I asked him many questions regarding that had already happened to me or come within my notice. Sometimes he sheered off the subject or turned the conversation by pretending not to understand, but generally he answered all I asked most frankly. Then, as time went on, and I had gotten somewhat bolder, I asked him for some of the strange things of the preceding night, as for instance why the coachman went to the place where he had seen the blue flames. He then explained to me that it was commonly believed that on certain night of the year, the last night in fact, where all evil spirits are supposed to have unchecked swell, a blue flame is seen over any place where treasure has been concealed. That treasure has been hidden, he went on, in the region though through which you came last night. There can be but little doubt, for it was the ground fought over for a century by Volscian and the Saxon and the Turk, where there is hardly a foot of soil in all the region that has not been enriched by the blood of men, patriots or invaders. In the old days there were stirring times, when the Austrians and the Hungarians came up in hordes, and the patriots went out to them to meet them, men and women, the aged and the children too, and waited their coming to the rocks above the pass. They might, they might sweep destruction on them with their artificial avalanches. When the invaded was triumphant, he found but little of whatever there was had been sheltered in the friendly soil. But how? I said. Can it have can it have remained so long undiscovered, when there is such index to it if men will but take the trouble to look? The Count smiled, and as his lip ran back over his gum, the long, sharp canine teeth out showed out strangely. He answered, "Because your peasant is at heart a coward and a fool. Those flames only appear on one night, and on the night no man of this land will, if he can help it, stare without his door. And, dear sir, even if he did, he would not know what to do. Why, even the peasant that you tell me of, who marked the place of the flame, would not know where to look in daylight, even if his own work. Even you would not, I dare be sworn, be able to find these places again." "There you are right," I said. "I know no more than the dead where even to look for them." Then we drift into another matter. Goodness gracious. Oh my god. Come on. Oh dear. One sec. Oh, that was a nasty burp. It was acid reflex burp. Oh gosh. One sec. I'm just gonna eat a chewing tablet. It helps with acid reflex. No? Plus it have minty flavor. A wizard raining and telling a story. Mint and water do not combine. Okay, let's see here. "Come," he said at last, "tell me of London, and of the house which you have procured for me." With an apology for my remissness, I went into my own room to get the papers from my bag. Whilst I was placing them in order, I heard a rattling of china and silver in the next room, and as I passed through, noticed that the table had been cleared and a lamp lit, for it was by this time deep into the darkness. The lamps were also lit in the study or library, and I found the Count lying on the sofa reading all the things in the world, an English Bradshaw's Guide. When I came in, he cleared the book and papers off the table, and with him I went into plans and deeds and figures of all sort. He was interested in everything and asked me a myriad of questions about the place and its surrounding. He clearly had studied beforehand all he could get on the subject of the neighborhood, for he evidently at the end knew very much more than I did. When I remarked this, he answered, "Well, but my friend, is it not needful that I should? When I go there, I shall be all alone, and my friend Hawker Jonathan, nay, pardon me, I shall fall into my country's habit of putting your patronymic first. My friend Jonathan Harker will not be able to be by my side to correct and aid me. He will be in Exeter, miles away, probably working on papers of law with my other friend Peter Hawkins, so we went thoroughly into business of the purchase of the estate at Purfleet. Purfleet. Oh my god, it sounds so hilarious when you say Purfleet. Sorry, guys. When I had told him the fact that he got his signature to the necessary papers and had written a letter with them ready to post to Mr. Hawkins, he began to ask me how I had come across so suitable a place. I read to him the notes which I had made at the time and which I inscribed here. At Purfleet on By Road, I came across just such a place as seemed to be required, and where was displaced a dilapidated notice that the place was for sale. It was surrounded by a high wall of ancient structure, built of heavy stone, and has not been repaired for a large number of years. The closed gates are of heavy old oak and iron, all eaten with rust. The state is called the Carfax. No doubt of corruption of the old quartier face, as the house is four-sided, agreeing with the cardinal points of the compass. It contained in all some 20 acres, quite surrounded by the solid stone wall above mentioned. There are many trees on it, which make it in places gloomy, and there is a deep dark-looking pond or small lake, evidently fed by some springs, as the water is clear and flows away in a fair-sized stream. The house is very large, of all periods back, I should say, to medieval times, for one part is of stone immensely thick, with only a few windows high up and heavily bordered with iron. It looked like part of keep, and close to an old chapel or church. I could not enter it, as I had no key of the door leading to it from the house, but I have taken with me my Kodak views of it from various points. The house had been added to it by this very straggling way, and I can only guess that the amount of ground it covered, which must be very great. There are but a few houses close at hand, one being a very large house only recently added to the formed into a private lunatic asylum. It is not, however, visible from the grounds. Wow, being a neighbor with a lunatic asylum, that's just fantastic. him it might be free food. Not really, but when I had finished, he said, I'm glad that it's old and big. I myself, of an old family, and to live in a new house would kill me. A house cannot be made habitable in a day, and after all, how few days go to make up a century. I rejoice also that there is a chapel of old times, we Transylvanians nobles love not to think that our bones may lie amongst the common dead. I seek not gated nor mithered, nor the bright voluptuous of much sunshine and sparkling waters, which please the young and gay. Oh, that's right, back in the day, gay meant happy, not now. So yeah, I am no longer young, and my heart, though weary years of mourning over the dead, is not attuned to myth. However, moreover, the walls of my castle are broken, the shadows are many, and the wind breathes cold through the broken battlements of the casement. I love the shade and the shadow. It would be alone with my thoughts when I may. Somehow his words and his look did not seem to accord, or else it was his cast of face made him smile, look malignant and saturnine. Goodness. I'm learning so many new words today. Oh. Presently, with an excuse, he left me, asking me to pull my papers together. He was some little time away, and I began to look at some of the books around me. One was an atlas, which I found open naturally to inland, as if that map had been much used. On looking at it, I found in certain places little rings marked, and on examining these, I noticed that there was near London on the east side, manifestly where his new estate was situated. The other two were Extern and Whitby, and on the Yorkshire coast. It was better part of an hour when the Count returned. Ah, he said, still at your books. Good. But you must not work always. Come. I am informed that your supper is ready. Took my arm and went into the next room where I found an excellent supper ready on the table. The Count again excused himself, as he had dined out on his being away from me. But he sat as the previous night and chatted while I ate. After supper I smoked, as on the last evening. The Count stayed with me, chatting and asking questions on every conceivable subject, hour after hour. I felt that it was getting very late indeed, but I did not say anything, for I felt under obligation to meet my hostess' wishes in every way. I was not sleepy, as the long sleep yesterday had forfeited me, but I could not help experience that chill which come over one at the coming of the dawn, which is like, in its way, the turn of the tide. They say that the people who are near death dies generally at the change of dawn or the turn of the tide. Anyone who has Anyone who has when tired and tied, as it were, to his post, experienced this change in atmosphere, can well believe it. All at once we heard a crow of cocks coming up with preternatural shrillness through the early morning air. Count Dracula jumped to his feet, said, "Why, there is morning again. How remiss I am to let you stay up so long. You must make your conversation regarding my dear new country of England less interesting, so that I may not forget how time flies by us." With a courtly bow, he quickly left me. I went into my room and drew the curtains, but there were little to notice. My window opened into the courtyard. All I could see was the warm grey of a quickening sky, so I pulled the curtain again and have written of this day. Alright, oh, let's see here. There we go. Alright, let's scroll down. There we go. May 8th. I began to fear as I wrote this book that I was getting too diffuse. Now I'm glad that I went into detail from the first, for there is something so strange about this place and all in it that I cannot but feel uneasy. I wish I were safe out of it, or that I had never come. It may be that this strange night existence is telling on me, but would that were all. If there were anyone to talk to that I could bear it. But there is none. I have only the Count to speak with, and he, I fear, I am myself the only living soul within this place. Let me be prosaic so far as facts can be. It will help me to bear up and imagine must not run riot with me. If it does, I am lost. Let me say at once how I stand or seem to. I only slept a few hours when I went to bed, and feeling that I could not sleep anymore, got up. I had hung my shaving glass by the window and was just beginning to shave. Suddenly, I feel a hand on my shoulder and hear the Count's voice saying to me, "Good morning." I started, for it amazed me that I had not seen him since the reflection of the glass covered the whole room behind me. In starting, I had cut myself slightly, but did not notice it at the moment. Having answered the Count's salutations, I turned the glass again to see how I had been mistaken. This time there could be no error, for the man was close to me, and I could see him over my shoulder, but there was no reflection of him in the mirror. The whole room behind me was displayed, but there were no sign of the man in it except myself. This was startling, and coming on the top of many strange things, was beginning to increase the vague feeling of uneasiness which I always have when the Count is near. But at the instant I saw that the cut had bled a little bit, and the blood was trickling down over my chin. I laid down the razor, turning as I did so half around to look over the sticking plaster. When the Count saw my face, his eyes blazed with a sort of demonic fury, and he suddenly made a grab at my throat. I threw away, and his hand touched the sting of the bead which held the crucifix. It made an instant change in him, for the fury passed so quickly that I could hardly believe. And it was even there. "Take care," he said. "Take care of how you cut yourself. It is more dangerous than you think in this country. Then seizing the shaving glass, and he went on, and this is the wretched thing that has done the mischief. It is foul babble of man's vanity. Away with it, and opening the window with one wrench of his trembling hand, he flung out the glass, which was shattered into 1,000 pieces on the stone of the country yard far below. Then he withdrew without a word. It is very annoying, for I do not see how I have to shave unless in my watch case or the bottom of the shaving pot, which is fortunately of metal. When I went into the dining room, breakfast was prepared, but I could not find the Count anywhere, so I breakfasted alone. It is strange that as yet I have not seen the Count eat or drink. He must be a very peculiar man. After breakfast, I did a little exploration in the castle. I went up the stairs and found a room looking towards the south. The view was magnificent, and from where I stood there was every opportunity of seeing it. The castle is on the very edge of a terrific Pacific. A stone falling from the window would fall 1,000 feet without touching anything. As far as the eye can reach is a sea of green treetops with green tops with occasion a deep rift where there is sharp chasms. Here and there a silver thread where the rivers wind in deep gorges through the forest. But I am not in heart to describe beauty, for when I had seen the view, I explored further, doors everywhere, and all locked and bolted. In no place, save from the windows in the castle walls, is there an available exit. The castle is a veritable prison, and I am the prisoner. Okay, guys. Okay. So this is the end of chapter 2. Hell yeah! Oh my god. So, yeah. So I'm gonna be reading, hopefully, chapter 3 and 4 after this. But for now, I am gonna take a break on, yeah, a little bit less than 2 hours. But, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed so far. And I'm gonna start again in 10 o'clock my time. That would be a little bit less than 2 hours from now. So if you guys want to continue hearing the story of Dracula, tune in then. But in the meantime, I hope you guys enjoy the story. And see you guys later. Take care. And if I don't see you guys now, I hope you guys have a lovely Friday. Bye bye.